Sayın Türkiye Büyük Millet Meclisi Başkan Vekilim, sayın rektörlerim, saygıdeğer konuklarımız. Türkiye Büyük Millet Meclisi'nin
distinguished guests, distinguished deputies of the Parliament, in cooperation with the Marmara University of Marmara, Istanbul University and Kilis University, welcome to our Shared Culture and History Symposium. And for our program, I would like to invite you to a minute's silence in the memory of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and our martyrs.
saygıdeğer
distinguished guests. Now I would like to invite to the floor Mustafa Karadoğan Coşkun for his opening remarks, the rector of Kilis University. Distinguished Deputy Chairman of the Parliament, distinguished rectors, distinguished Chair. Before starting my remarks, I would like to welcome you. Yemen has a very volatile history. As you know, it joined the Ottoman lands in 17th century, and back then a unity was created on the lands of Yemen. And the Ottoman state not only created a unity in Yemen, but it also made Yemen an important state because of its strategic importance. But as you know, in 1918, during the days of World War I, our young people were sent to Yemen, and ever since then we have felt that pain inside our hearts. Because our borders in our hearts extend beyond our national borders. And if there is a nation under oppression, regardless of their religion, their language, their sect, we always see it as a responsibility to reach out to them. And therefore, it is not suitable with this historical approach to ask what kind of business we have in different territories, because we will be anywhere we are needed. We will be there with science, with culture, with our economy, because all equations that exclude Turkey bring only trouble to the world. And our mothers are aware of this, and they make sacrifices and send their sons to abroad lands for the homeland, and our heroes went there without any hesitation, and they were there where we were supposed to be. At the harmonica plays, do you think that's a wedding? And there is a red flag, do you think it's a bride's dress? And those who go to Yemen, do you think they come back? This is a poem about pain. This is the pain of mothers and their sons. In Turkish, we say a cup of coffee is worth 40 years of friendship, and this nation is very well aware of that. So, distinguished chair, when it comes to Yemen, we always talk about coffee and our traditional songs. And at this academic gathering, we will be listening to valuable academics and valuable experts. And throughout the symposium, they will be sharing with us valuable information. So without trespassing into their zone, I will only limit myself to sharing my feelings, and I will conclude my remarks with one more thing. As you know, Kilis is one of Turkey's important gateways to the Middle East. And we are well off our geographical location, and we are aware of the liabilities brought to us by this geographical location. And our mission is to conduct studies mainly focusing on the Middle East. In 2010, we launched our research center on the Middle East, and ever since we have implemented many academic projects and we published them. Also, we publish an academic journal called Ortak and Göç, and it is still being published. And we also started a graduate program on the Middle East and migration. And the projects are mainly focused on Syria, but in the medium term, the projects will focus on the whole Middle East region. We have set this as a mission for ourselves. So therefore, it is an honor to be a part of this organization. First of all, I would like to thank the chair and deputy chair of the Turkish Parliament for supporting this organization. And I would like to thank our friend Mahmut Ak, Professor Mahmut Ak and his team for inviting us to this organization. And I would like to thank Professor Abdullah and all professors who have contributed to this program. And Marmara University, the rector of Marmara University, I would like to also thank him for his contributions. And I welcome all participants with my sincere feelings. Welcome. Distinguished Director, thank you very much. Distinguished guests, now I would like to invite to the floor Professor Ural Özvar, the Rector of Marmara University. Distinguished Deputy Chair of the Turkish Parliament, distinguished rectors, distinguished participants, Professor Mustafa Şentop, the Chairman of the Turkish Parliament. This organization is supported by Professor Mustafa Şentop and with the contribution of Kilis, December 7th University, Marmara University, and Istanbul University. I would like to start my remarks by expressing my gratitude for being a part of this program. In some territories, it is not possible to forget about them, just like the impact of a cup of coffee. It covers a huge part in your heart, and the story of these lands are told across the lands, and it would be inevitable to remember the importance of coffee during a conference about Yemen. Yemen is a land like that. It is the symbol of the friendly relationship, a shared history, shared culture, and a shared understanding with Anatolian lands. And today, we have a century-old relationship with this geography, and with the mission to remember and remind and honor this history, we are organizing this event. Taking this opportunity, we will be discussing how valuable Yemen is for Turkey and for Turkish people. Our commitment to Yemen dates back to a century ago, and to strengthen our links with this land and to fulfill our historical mission to reconstruct and rebuild that land. This is the main mission of this symposium. Throughout history, Yemen has hosted many civilizations, and in ancient times it was known as Arabia Felix or El Arabia Es-Saide, the happy Arabic lands. And in recent years it has been the scene of one of the most grave humanitarian crises on earth. The political crisis is deepening, and the government instruments are not sufficient to resolve this crisis and to bring Yemen back to its glorious days. We are also committed to bring those days back. And Yemen was one of the important pillars during the revolts, which were called the Arabian Spring. And Ali Abdullah Saleh was taken down during that time, and there was an expectation that the country would see a democratic process. And in an atmosphere which is rife with war, conflict, and corruption, we cannot talk about democracy. And the global forces, because of their political agenda and their hidden agendas, they have striked a coup on the democratic process in Yemen. And the actors which accelerated the destabilization process in Yemen have even further deepened the crisis in Yemen, which affected access to food, clean water, and medicine. And many Yemenis have lost their lives in this tragedy. The whole world is silent in the face of this crisis in Yemen, but the Republic of Turkey is reaching out to lands under oppression and gives them hope, and to alleviate the troubles of Yemen, Turkey has taken actions, and it has taken actions to heal the wounds of Yemenis and bring the whole world's attention to Yemen. The efforts and prayers of the people of these lands and the capabilities of the Turkish government will help the Yemenis recover as soon as possible. It will be a source of motivation for them. Yemen is given to us by our history, by our martyrs, and by our civilization. Therefore, owning this, supporting this civilization should be one of the most important missions of our nation. I believe that as those who are responsible for this liability, this symposium will raise awareness in the academia about Yemen, and in the future, more academic institutions and civil society organizations will further strengthen the friendly relations between the two countries with their efforts. Taking this opportunity, I would like to thank those who have contributed to this organization, the Deputy Chairman of the Turkish Parliament, and I would like to thank the universities who have contributed to this organization, and I hope this symposium will bring us success. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rector. Now I would like to pass the floor to Professor Mahmut Ak, the Rector of Istanbul University. The floor is yours. Distinguished Deputy Chairman of the Turkish Parliament, distinguished rectors, and distinguished participants, welcome to our first International Shared History and Culture Symposium on Yemen, and I would like to welcome you to our program. Before starting my remarks, I would like to point out that in 2017, Istanbul University, in cooperation with Turkish History Organization and TİKA, we organized a symposium on Yemen. In March 2017, Uşak University organized a symposium on Yemen during the first sovereignty period of the Ottoman Empire. And during the symposium, we discussed the second Ottoman administration in Yemen in an academic atmosphere. And this time, we are gathering under the support of the Turkish Parliament at this symposium. And we will be looking at Yemen in a cultural and social context. But in the past 2 years, we have seen a humanitarian crisis in Yemen for women and children. And to bring the world's attention to this problem, we also include the humanitarian aspect of Yemen in this conference. As a matter of fact, the number of people affected by cholera has reached 500,000, and there are millions of students who are educated under unhealthy conditions. Distinguished participants, we have historical and cultural ties with Yemen, and It is an important land for the security of Harem-i Mecca, and it is also located on the spice route. And it has always been a very strategically important land. And historically, it was governed by the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and the Ayyubid. And Yemen has a very valuable cultural history. And in the 17th century, it was ruled by the Ottoman governments. And in 1833, the troops acting under Mehmet Emin Pasha and revolted against the Ottomans, and the British forces also invaded the Yemeni lands, and the Mondros Agreement marked the end of the Ottoman hegemony in Yemen. And after the Lausanne Agreement, Yemen was no more an Ottoman land. It was ruled by the British, and in 1967 the South Yemen declared its independence, and in 1990 the Yemen became an independent country. But in recent years, it became an attraction for many countries, for many actors, because of its location and because of the civil war, which started in 2015. Many Yemenis were displaced. In Yemen, there are many refugees from Somalia and other countries. Distinguished participants, in this symposium, we will be looking at these issues from a historical and cultural perspective. This symposium will make a contribution to strengthen the ties between Turkey and Yemen. Here we will be discussing the culture and history of Yemen, but we will also understand the humanitarian crisis better in Yemen, and we will be contributing to the resolution of this crisis. And all panelists will be addressing these issues in an objective way. Our only mission is to bring peace and stability to Yemen, and therefore we need long-term cooperation globally. At Istanbul University, we see this potential, and we believe that we can make scientific contribution to restore peace and stability in Yemen. And as I conclude my remarks, I think this symposium will be an opportunity to build stronger ties between the two countries and to contribute to the peace process in Yemen. And I would like to thank the chairman of the parliament for supporting this organization. I would like to thank the distinguished academics for their contributions, the international institutions and organizations, and everyone who has contributed to this symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished guests, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and former ambassador and who contributed to the studies of Yemen with his academic studies. I'd like to Mr. Hussein Al-Amri is going to join in the opening speech. He was going to join in the opening speech online, but he's receiving COVID treatment now, so he sent us a pre-record video. Now, I'd like to show you the video message of Mr. Al-Amri.
من مختلف الجامعات التركية المعتبرة المشاركون جميعا السلام عليكم.
Welcome everyone. May Allah's blessings be with you. Sana University's rectors and everyone else who participated in this meeting, welcome. I'd like to salute you with respect. And this symposium could be a milestone and an important manifestation of the brotherhood that we have. I'd like to be with you Yemen Sana University and many other universities presidents are participating in this symposium, and it is a great symposium. I'm saddened for not being with you. I'm receiving my treatment. So, distinguished participants, thank you very much for being in this important symposium, because this symposium touches upon many important issues, and these are beneficial issues. I hope this is going to be a contribution, even a small one. I hope that there would be a solution, but even if it is not a solution, the step that you are taking is very important for us, and I'd like to thank you very much, and I send my heartfelt prayers to you. May Allah's blessing with you. Yemen Parliamentary Council's member, thank you very much once again. Distinguished participants, now the Vice President of Grand Turkish National Assembly, Mr. Please proceed to the podium, sir. Before I start my speech, I'd like to send my get well wishes to Mr. Al-Amri, and I'd like to express our gratitude. Distinguished rectors, academics, and dear guests. It is a globalizing world that is going less and less stable. In this overall framework, Yemen is a region of intense geographic problems. To understand the political dynamics, to offer solutions, and to contribute to establishment of stability in Yemen, and to provide the humanitarian needs of our Muslim brothers in Yemen, we put this symposium together to this end. Under the auspices of Turkish Parliament, Istanbul University, Marmara University, and Kilis 7 Aralık University, universities put this symposium together, and we will have many valuable presentations and speeches, and I'd like to thank them for that, as it overlapped with the president of the Turkish Parliament, Mr. Shentop. He was not able to join this meeting, and he sent his salutations. Many academics and experts of the field are going to discuss many issues, but as it is a tradition, I'd like to touch upon a couple issues in the opening speech. I said to Professor Erol, and I said this is the power of theology. This is the power of addressing people. Forgive me for not having that kind of power, but I will express my feelings. Distinguished guests, starting from the 12th century, Resulids and Akudids and and after that, the Ottomans built many architectural works in Yemen, and they are still there. Since 16th century, we have very deep, fundamental cultural relations, and it is the country of the Queen of Saba, Belkis, and it is the country of Uveys al-Karani. The humanitarian situation that is going on in Yemen is upsetting us a lot. Since 2015, our brothers in Yemen are going through the violent conflicts, and they have problems in the access of basic services like health and education. Because of multilateral conflicts, a lot of destruction took place, and the Yemenis people took the biggest toll out of that. Under the leadership of United Nations Yemen representative, many efforts have been spent, but to no avail. Starting from the beginning of the conflict, many Yemenis people were displaced, and new problems are arising out of that. More than 100,000 people lost their lives, and about 3 million people went through a forced displacement. It is a country of 30 million people. In this crisis, Turkey stood by the international law and humanitarian understanding and supported Yemen to find a political solution to the crisis. Under the auspices of United Nations, political efforts were spent, and the legitimate government of Yemen KIC initiative, National Dialogue Conference results, and United Nations Security Council's resolutions should be followed, and Houthis, and in line with the MGK's decision, they need to withdraw from the lands that they took over. As Turkey, we believe that military solutions are not going to be final solution. We believe that the ultimate solution is going to go through an inclusive political dialogue, and we believe that any solution should defend the interest of the people of Yemen. So the political unity and territorial integrity of Yemen, on this basis, the conflicts should be solved via a peaceful process. And we support the political endeavors put together by the United Nations. So, in this regard, in 2015, Islamic Cooperation Organization established a Yemen group under Turkey's leadership, and this group had 6 meetings. The civil war that happened in Yemen could be overcome only via an understanding of brotherhood. And as Muslims, we have to provide all the necessary support. And we're going to keep following the political efforts of solution. According to UN data, Yemen is a place where a heavy humanitarian crisis is going on, and COVID-19 pandemic deteriorated significantly. Turkish people, starting from the very beginning of the crisis, we extended a hand to our brothers and sisters in Yemen. Both public authorities and civil society organizations spent enormous effort to heal the wounds of our brothers and sisters in Yemen. According to data of Turkish Red Crescent, 75% of people of Yemen need humanitarian aid. 12 million people need urgent aid, and 2.9 million children or pregnant women are facing malnutrition, and 600,000 children under 5 years of age are trying to survive. 8.4 million people are having significant problem in terms of access to food and food security. UNHCR chairperson said in 2019 that 16 million people face face hunger in Yemen, and thousands of people lost their lives. And in 2021, this number is going to increase. In this regard, help aid to Yemen has become mandatory, and we will keep being a main supporter to people of Yemen. Food security, sanitation, and education in every field like that. We will provide necessary support for the people of Yemen. Via humanitarian aid, we would like to contribute to the establishment of peace in the country. TİKA, Turkish Red Crescent, Turkey Diyanet Foundation, AFAD, and Ministry of Health are working together to help the people of Yemen. TİKA and Turkish Red Crescent have permanent personnel in Yemen. In 1988, Yemen Arabic Republic, in Yemen Arab Republic, we established our embassy in Yemen, but because of the conflict, the embassy is functioning in Riyadh. As Turkey, in the coming period, we will stand by our brothers and sisters in Yemen. Distinguished guests, to analyze the chaos that Yemen is going through better, we should look into the changing political paradigms in the last 3 centuries. The issue in Yemen, considering it as a regional manner, and explaining it via today's political actors, this is not possible. As of the moment, in political, economic, and military terms, the regional conflicts are increasing and the instability is on the rise. International law and the law of war is being violated, and societal hatred is on the rise, and it is being exploited by the political figures. Today, the mighty believes that they have the right. Starting from Yemen, the reason of chaos and humanitarian issues, we believe that developed countries have established a world order that goes against the democratic values that they defend. These countries see themselves as the representatives of the civilization, but the attitude that they showed in the vaccination issue disclosed their real face. So, on a continuous basis, we will heal the wounds of humanity, and we will support every effort to stop the ongoing wars, including the people of Yemen. Everywhere in the world, we need peace and quiet. And distinguished academics and researchers and experts are contributing to this symposium, and I believe the calls and the outcomes of this symposium, I hope, is going to be heard. In this regard, this first international Common History and Culture Symposium, I hope it's going to be fruitful, and it's being conducted under the auspices of Turkish Parliament. And I'd like to thank the university presidents and vice presidents for their contribution. I hope in the shortest possible time a permanent peace is going to be established in Yemen. And I'd like to thank you once again for your participation with my heartfelt salutations. Mr. Vice President of Turkish Parliament, thank you very much for this nice speech. And now we're going to have a 15-minute break, and afterwards we're going to move on with the opening speech that is going to be honored by the participation of valuable academics. Thank you very much. Coffee break now. Distinguished guests, welcome back. We're going to start the opening session now. I'd like to invite the chair of the session, Professor Abdullah Kızılcı from Istanbul University. Please proceed to the podium, Professor. Welcome. Distinguished, we have a lot of valuable speakers. We will have Professor Ahmet Uysal. He's going to talk about the geopolitics of Yemeni crisis. He's also from Istanbul University. How to look at Yemen, the image of Yemen in Turkey, is going to be presented by Professor Kiriya Kursun from Fatih Sultan Mehmet Foundation University. The other valuable speakers are going to be participating online. We will have Professor Stig Jarl Hansen from Norwegian University of Life Sciences. The speech is entitled Turkey's Role in Yemen. Welcome, Professor Hansen. And from Yemen Sana University, we will have Professor Mohammed Abdu Al-Sururi, and he's going to present a speech entitled The Effect of Geographic Location and Political History on Yemen. Now, the floor is Professor Kızılcı. He's going to have the session opened. Distinguished Vice President of the Parliament, distinguished academics, and dear guests, Yemen, historical dynamics and humanitarian aid is the theme of this first meeting. We're starting with the opening session. In this session, we will talk more about the geographic and strategic location of Yemen. We will talk about Turkey's role and perspective on Yemen. Before starting the session, I'd like to underline two issues. First of all, including this session, the presenters are given 15 minutes for their speech. I'd like to urge them to remain in the boundaries of time, and after the presentation, we will have a Q&A session normally, but this session is an exception. Because of time limitations, we're not going to have a Q&A session. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Professor Ahmet Uysal from Istanbul University. He's going to talk about the geopolitics of the crisis in Yemen. The floor is yours, Professor. Thank you. Distinguished Vice President of Turkish Parliament, rectors, media members, and guests. What is Yemen to Turkey? What is it for the world? You know, there are many factors. Let's see the map in the background here. Looking into the map, it is located in a critical location. It is just at the corner, so it has the sea connection, maritime connection, and from there to there is a connection to Indian subcontinent, and the Suez Canal is also very important. You know, this seaway for both the Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire and the others. You know, the sea meant trade and security. So in this regard, Yemen has always been important. So from Basra Bay to Suez Canal, they have been important seaways, important trade and security routes, and the Ottoman Empire wanted to keep this land under its control until the very last moment. In historical sense, the Arabic people are stemmed from Yemen. They root in Yemen, and in terms of agriculture and nutrition capacity, it has given a lot of migration outward. Hilalis, for example, they have played an important role in the Islamization of the lands. They migrated to Turkey's southeast, for example, a long distance. Another one is from the route of the bay. Most of the time they migrated from the coastline, across the coastline. And from Mecca and Medina, they migrated to Damascus, and some of them migrated to Africa. African connection, it doesn't come to the mind as a first thing, but Ethiopian and Eritrea connection are important. Somalia is important, and with Islamization, this land has been a part of the land of the Ummah, and the people of Yemen played an important role in the spread of Islam. About 500 years back, Mamluks attributed a lot of importance to Yemen as well. The Second Crusade, the big attempt of colonization after the fall of Andalusia, has taken place. They sometimes show it like an excursion. It's not like that. So on the one side, they threatened Eastern Mediterranean, Libya, Fas, Morocco, Tunis, and Algeria. On the other side, this crusade threatened the Hijaz lands as well. They wanted to kidnap the tomb of Prophet Muhammad. They were so determined, and their attack extended up to Indian subcontinent. Yemen acted as a base in these efforts. So Jews of Haybar, they migrated to Yemen. The Jews of Yemen are well known. So the people who escaped Medina went to Yemen as well. Today in Israel, there are many Jews coming from Yemen. Again, with the First World War, I am just discovering these historical accomplishments, by the way. The railroad, the new Silk Road, the Road and Belt project that China initiated today, the Ottoman Empire initiated something similar with Berlin-Baghdad Railway, which connected Europe with Asia. The Ottoman Empire had completed this railroad, but it didn't reap the fruits of this line because it disintegrated. Independently from the oil and petroleum, this would be a trade route. And we have Professor Zakaria here. He would know better, of course, but I just would like to note that from geopolitical terms, another line goes up to Mecca and Medina, and it involves Yemen as well. When the British invaded Suez Canal, there was an idea of a second canal, but it wasn't completed. And from Aqaba Bay to Egypt, there was an idea of a railroad, but British threatened this project with the war at the beginning of the 20th century, and this project never came to life. So Yemen is not far from us. It is vivid on our memories. People that went to Yemen, they didn't come back, and it's not that they lost their lives in Yemen, but the roads were interrupted. They bombed the railroad, so nobody was able to use the railroad. So our heroes, our soldiers, lived and died in that region. So the railroad was designated as a boundary between Turkey and Syria. So they basically disintegrated the region, and because of the external interventions, the railroad remained unused and it became obsolete. And as the heroes who went to Yemen didn't come back, they established neighborhoods, Turkish neighborhoods in Yemen. But we have lost the connections in history, but we are trying to revitalize these connections. Another critical point about Yemen is, the Egypt is like one corner and Yemen is another. So, if you consider it's like a heater radiator, there are two valves. One is on the top, the other is at the bottom. If you just close one of them, the heater would not work. So from Bab el-Mandeb, because of Bab el-Mandeb, Suez has a critical location. Abdul Nasser wanted to unite the region against colonialism, with a secular nationalist Republican project, a Nasserist project. He wanted to unite the region, and he wanted to take the region outside the Western colonialism, but he wanted to emancipate the region. In this process, Yemen was divided. The Bey dynasties, for example, they were more pro-Western, and because of the losses in human life and property, Yemen became something like a Vietnam for Egypt, So Saudi Arabia, when they entered in a conflict with Houthis, they asked for military support from Egypt, but they refused because they had a negative memory of Yemen. Ali Abdullah the two sides of Yemen was united under Ali Abdullah Salih, but it was not managed properly. It has a huge trade potential, but it didn't benefit from that. And as if it is a success, the World Bank or UNDP, they lend the support. And Ali Abdullah Salih portrayed receiving a couple $1 million from UNDP or World Bank. He portrayed this as if it is a success. Of course, this land is not destined to be poor, but it is very poor now. In the context of the Arab Spring, just like the other dictators, it could be in the Nasser Mubarak line, pro-Western line, or any other way, a dictatorship continued. And since these administrations failed epically, they started falling down. Yemen was important. Tunis was important. What happened in Egypt. Ali Abdullah Salih fell, but Saudi Arabia basically said, okay, let it be democracy, but Ali Abdullah Salih would be able to compete as well. They wanted to sabotage the system, because the former dictator would have economic, institutional, and financial advantage, and this strained the democracy in Yemen. And with Houthis, Ali Abdullah Salih, the Gulf region basically gave a blind eye to this. Islah Party and the other democratic powers were competing, but Saudi Arabia does not like democracy. There is no secret. Saudi Arabia sees Yemen as a backyard. It sees Yemen as a civilization, but to speak the truth, Saudi Arabia sees Yemen as a backyard, and they don't help Yemen to get back on its feet. And so there is a significant conflict here against the empowerment of Yemen, and Saudi Arabia and the United States basically gave a blind eye. They ignored the Houthi coup, and they basically thought these forces would clash each other. You know, the people of Yemen are known with their hikmah. You know, they're not easily provocated. Islah realized, they saw the game that the international powers are playing. So if this country is going to turn into the backyard of Saudi Arabia, we're not going to go into that war. This is what the Islah party said. And Yemen is threatening not only Saudi Arabia, but the Gulf region. You know, Houthi is an extension of Iran. They started dominating Yemen. And, you know, there is the new Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. He wanted to obtain a victory, and that would be a way for him to get the throne of the Saudi Arabia. But things did not play out as he expected. You know, he would expect military support from Egypt, but Egypt did not lend the military support. They expected land forces from Pakistan as well, because they wanted to uproot the Houthis from villages. So they didn't have the land forces from Pakistan. So they had the maritime embargo, and they had the air attacks. They basically sieged Yemen. Of course, the cost is being paid by the people of Yemen. If Saudi Arabia, you know, leaves the scene with a defeat, it would be, in practical terms, it would be handing Yemen over to Iran. So they don't have any other exit scenario. You know, this region is not really a priority for Iran. For them, the people of Yemen are, they have Houthis, for example, who are fighting under difficult conditions, but they see the Houthis as barefooted people. They look down on them. They believe that they are pressing the United States via Yemen, but I don't think the United States is being influenced by that. But there is a discursive pressure now. Biden is touching upon the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, but it's just at the discursive level now. So this situation is not close to solution now. So it is on the agenda, especially, Saudi Arabia's, Turkey's support in Libya, Montenegro, and Turkey's accomplishment in Karabakh region of Azerbaijan indicated Turkey's capacity. So, the Saudis have an anti-Ihwan obsession, especially the United Arab Emirates is coming to the fore in this obsession, anti-Ihwan obsession. So on the other side, they are laying traps for Saudi Arabia because there is a Southern Passage project, and they want to divide Yemen once again in line with the interest of Israel and West. This is practically going on. We exceeded our time. Can you please wrap it up, Professor? So, the Emirates that invaded the south, they want to disintegrate the region, just like they want to do it in Libya and Somalia. The United Arab Emirates does not have the capacity or the will, but they are doing this in line with the interest of the West and Israel. You know, the Emirates pushed Saudi Arabia to this conflict because they wanted both Iran and Saudi Arabia to get weakened. There is a demand of support from Turkey as of today, but you know, they have understandings like, you know, you buy the weapons, we pay for them, but you know, Saudi Arabia is not really following an independent politics. They're not outside the American influence, so they are hesitant. You know, with the Jamal Khashoggi event, they are in a psychology to accuse Turkey as if Turkey is the one who committed the crime. They want to align with Israel, but it's not taking them anywhere, especially with the recently rising Palestinian resistance. They are losing their popularity. They were not really popular, but you know, after what Israel did, this project became an epic fail. So we're waiting a more reasonable understanding to rise in the region. Maybe Saudi Arabia could be a main factor here, and because of its vulnerability, you know, economic, political vulnerabilities, and the pressure from the Jamal Khashoggi event, well, all these are binding Saudi Arabia. So the Saudi Arabia is the main actor in the Yemen crisis, but Yemen turned into a conflict zone for other countries. We will talk about the details of that conflict. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ahmet Uysal. We are a little bit behind our schedule, but not too much. As far as I can understand, to summarize what the professor has told, the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden are very important for the global trade. And he said the resolution of the crisis in Yemen would not be very easy, particularly the peace will be proportional with the interests of the Gulf Peninsula, Arabic Peninsula, and the Gulf countries. But maybe we should take one step behind and look at the humanitarian crisis. In that case, we can be even more closer to peace. And we will continue with the second panelist, Professor Kiriya Kursun from Fatih Sultan Mehmet University. He will be talking about how we should look at Yemen and the image of Yemen in Turkey. Thank you very much, distinguished chair. Could you please let me know when I have 3 minutes left? Distinguished chair, distinguished participants, I would like to welcome you. Of course, within my time, it's impossible to cover everything about this subject, but if you like, we can start with the latest developments and we can share a few examples about this topic so that we can make a meaningful contribution to this discussion. Since March 2015, we have seen a cruel, unfair, and unjust war in Yemen. And as we have heard during the opening remarks, millions of people are at the risk of starvation, drought, and death. So Yemen was quite silent before the Arab Spring, but suddenly it came to the global agenda. And maybe Turkey is one of the countries that was supposed to feel this, and that actually happened. And with through the Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations, Turkey tried to reach out to the people, despite the internal conflict and despite international barriers. And therefore, I would like to thank the Turkish people for their helping hand, but I think this sensitivity about Yemen has a historical background. I will be focusing on that. So the conclusion of my remarks will be that we should not forget one thing. As Professor Ahmet Uysal summarized, this land of Yemen with other two lands have a deep root in the history of Turkey. So this is not only about humanitarian efforts, this is also about strategical goals of Turkey. Yemen, the Gulf of Basra, and Sudan. They are three important locations that are closely connected with the Turkish population in Anatolia. And if you look at closely to these territories, you can understand what I mean. And as previous panelists mentioned, Turkey's relationship with Yemen did not start with the Ottomans. It actually dates back to the time of the Seljukians. And in the early periods, the Ottoman presence was widely accepted in the region. But Yemen became the first overseas destination of campaigns, Ottoman campaigns. The first military base of the Ottomans was created in Yemen, and the cannons that are used in those lands are unfortunately at the museums in the United Kingdom. So we have a strong relationship with that territory. Until 2010, there were significant developments between Turkey and Yemen, but with the Arab Spring and the following events, our relationship was limited to humanitarian efforts. But it should not be forgotten that Turkey's presence in the Gulf of Aden and Turkey's activities in Somalia were stopped because of the war that started in 2015. So this civil war is not only about succession of governments, it's also because of Turkey's ambitions to realize its ambitions in this area, in this territory. As you know, in 2017, a process was launched in the Gulf of in the Persian Gulf, and there were other efforts in Syria. So Turkey's efforts in different parts of the world are symbolizing its strong presence, which is revived after centuries ago. So Turkey's perspective on Yemen is not only based on this historical relationship, but also on our humanitarian efforts. So Yemen is also a vital issue for Turkey because of this historical connection. I will make a summary of this research about where we can find Yemen in Turkey. And we have some documents and publications which are the products of our shared culture. There are hundreds of thousands of documents and publications that mention Yemen. And it's interesting that many the academics here would be aware of this. Maybe there aren't any specific books about specific parts of the Ottoman lands, but there are some publications that specifically focus on Yemen, and this emphasizes the importance of Yemen in the lands of the Ottoman Empire. And besides those, I want to talk about the image of Yemen in Turkey, particularly the image of Arabs in Turkey, and how Yemenis compare to that image, how the textbooks in Turkey talk about Yemen, and how does the public think about Yemen. I started a study to answer these questions. This is an ongoing study, so I cannot cover all of the answers to these questions, but I will try to summarize my findings. And the values created by Yemen and all the discourse in Turkey about Yemen are mainly positive. In the textbooks, in the newspapers and magazines, and in the publications, we don't have any negative connotations of Yemenis. And in many of these texts, the words Arab and Yemeni are used separately, as if they are different concepts. I won't go into the details because of the time limit. So I would like to highlight a few issues we see during the Republican era. And today, via press and textbooks, we build a mindset of the society, for the society. The society and the educated population get their opinions about other nations via these textbooks and these publications. And for Yemen, we have this picture following the declaration of the Republic because of the sanctions under the Lausanne Agreement. The relationship with the Arab territories were cut down. And in the first years of the Republic, the news about the Arab countries are limited, and they are quite prejudiced because of the revolts in those lands. But there was a national resistance movement in Morocco that was widely covered by the Turkish media, and the developments in Yemen were also covered by the media at that time. The interest in Yemen was mainly because in 1920, in Ankara, just before the elections in Turkey, Yemen also launched an electoral process to send some MPs to Ankara. So the local government of Yemen tried to build relationship with Ankara. So Yemen elected 20 deputies at that time, but because of the conditions of the time, none of them could make it to Ankara. And there is one more reason for that. There was a Turkish population who stayed in Yemen after the war, and that population was one of the reasons that Yemenis were so interested in Turkey. And in the correspondence between Turkey and Mahmud Nedim Bey, we see this interest in Yemen towards Turkey. Mahmud Nedim Bey was the last Ottoman governor in Yemen, and Imam Yahya did not leave him alone after the war, and he contributed to the foundation of modern Yemeni state. And I can also bring this to the attention of the parliament. Mahmud Bey signed the documents under the name of the governor of Yemen, acting under the mandate of the Turkish parliament. So he acted as an intermediary between Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and Yemeni authorities. But these efforts also created a wide interest in Yemen towards Turkey. The Turkish soldiers and government officials who stayed in Yemen after the war, they acted as the symbols of a remote Turkish state that still survived in Yemen. In 1927, there was some conflicts emerging. There was a conflict emerging between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and that was also covered by the Turkish media. And the Yemeni forces attempted to seize Aden, and Turkish media covered that as a victory. And the developments that brought Yemen and Saudi Arabia on the verge of a conflict were also covered by the Turkish media. And Turkey silently acted as an intermediary, as a negotiator between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. And a Turkish government official was sent to Yemen, and he sought whether he could act as a negotiator between the two states. And his report was published by the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think it was one of the first reports which was published in the modern Turkish alphabet. You have 3 minutes left. Okay, I'll wrap up. So, the Turkish media continued its interest in Yemen, though intermittently, and there was a positive coverage. We can get some examples from newspapers and magazines. And the Yunus Nadi, who often had a negative perspective about the developments in the Arab territories, said this about Yemen. He says of Imam Yahya government, "We remember that the Zaydis are good people, and Yemen is the most fertile land in the whole Arabic Peninsula. We hope that all people who share the same religion as us were the citizens of the same state as us. Those who follow the Ottoman documents know that Yemen is like Izmit, just like the connection between Izmit and Istanbul. And they see this remote land of Yemen as close as Izmit to Istanbul. So there is a heartfelt connection between Yemen and Turkey. In 1948, after the assassination of Imam Yahya, there will be some further developments, and there were some correspondence letters between Imam Yahya and the Turkish parliament. And back then, those territories were called Najib and Hejaz, and there were some agreements of friendship. And back then, the Yemeni authorities asked for arms from Turkey, and Ankara tried its best to support them. And I won't go into the details mentioned in these letters because I'm out of time. And when we look at the public discourse on Yemen, people talk about the coffee of Yemen, the songs of Yemen, and all women, all girls of Turkey carry the clothes, the textile products of Yemen on their heads. The men also wore turbans that were made in Yemen, and the Turkish soldiers who fought in Yemen are also in the memory of the Turkish people. And stories of the Prophet Muhammad are also known by the people, and most of these stories are the compilations that are made by the Turkish soldiers who went to Yemen to fight. And a final quote. I have a few quotes from the families who have been to Yemen during those times, and in the letters of the soldiers who fought in Yemen, we see they don't have any negative perspective on Yemen. So we can make many hypotheses about this verbally or in writing, but we need to give more academic attention to Yemen. We have done this so far, and it looks like this will continue in the future. All universities should do the same. Maybe we could give special attention to the students from Yemen. As my colleague said, Yemen will be one of the most powerful, was said to be one of the most powerful states in the region because of its resources and human capital. But because of the conflict, this potential is being undermined. And with our attention, Yemen will catch up, and this positive perspective in the Turkish society should be used in favor of Yemen and in favor of Turkey. Yemen is an important territory for the history of Turkey. We should never forget about them. This is the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Bilgilerinden ve etkili konuşmasından dolayı Profesör Doktor Kiriya Kursun'a teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much, Professor Kursun, for this nice speech. He talked about the image of Yemen in Turkey, political, military, economic, and social issues were taken from our joint history, and he also emphasized that Turkey has a positive perspective on Yemen, and I'd like to thank him very much once again. Now we will have Professor Hansen from the Norwegian University. The subject of his presentation is a role of Turkey in Yemen. Professor, the stage is yours.
Venue of distinguished representatives from Turkish academics and politics.
You welcome, please. Professor.
I think my presentation will be partly a kind of wish list because I think Turkey has a great role to play in Yemen. And it's a kind of promotion for the Turkish role that I'm going to deliver today, but also indicate some that you might walk into if you're not careful about how you go about entering into. The Yemeni war now has been going on since 2015, really. Some of the forerunners to the conflict started out in 2014.
Savaşın öncülleri 2014'te başladı aslında. Bu bir insani felaket ve son kayıp figürleri 232 bin, evet bu kadar insan hayatını kaybetti bu saldırılarda. Burada hem gıdaya hem de sağlık hizmetlerine erişimde çok ciddi sorunlar var. Yemen'deki çatışmayı bölgesel bir çatışma olarak görürken jeopolitik boyutu da görmemiz gerekiyor. Çünkü bu önemli.
Local factors that intervenes here. We should not see the Houthis as a kind of Hezbollah. Hezbollah was founded more or less by Iran. Houthis have their own path. We should not see the different
Burada farklı fraksiyonlar var ve bu çok karmaşık bir yapı arz ediyor. Taraflara baktığımızda bunlar tamamen kabile desteğiyle hareket ediyorlar ve kendi bağımsız tarihleri var. Dolayısıyla İran'ın amacının da göz önünde tutulması gerekiyor bu bağlamda. Ben iki üniter aktör olarak onları izliyorum, takip ediyorum.
Complex, it's dependent on tribal support. The efforts of the Hadi government, supported by Saudi Arabia, is also partly depending on the support. It's also partly dependent on the support of local tribes and, of course, the Islam, the offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, who also have a kind of tribal basis. So we here see a kind of offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood who says that it's not anymore an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, but also have tribal elements into it. So it's highly complex in its situation. It's lack of unitary parties. You have tribalism, sectarianism combined with tribalism and politics. You also have what I call a shadow state structure that can be confusing.
Burada gölge devlet yapıları da var ve bu karışıklık oluşturuyor. Bir takım kurumlar var. Burada önemli aileler de hesaba katılması gereken bir şey. Burada oldukça karmaşık bir yapıdan bahsediyoruz. Burada tabii ki Türk tarihini ve oradaki herkes aşağı yukarı benden daha iyi biliyordur. Ancak benim Türk siyasetine bakışım şu: Türkiye yüzyıllar boyunca görece merkezileşmiş üniter bir aktör olarak hareket etti. Dolayısıyla bu gayrimerkezi çatışmada Türkiye'nin rolü önemli. Benim şöyle bir iddiam var. Bir askeri çatışmayı, böyle bir askeri çatışmayı kazanmak neredeyse imkansız. Çünkü çok desantralize, çok gayrimerkezi bir kriz bu. Burada kendi grubunu büyük ölçüde kaybetti. Eski Cumhurbaşkanından bahsediyorum. 2017'de suikaste uğradı kendisi. Bu da daha fazla fragmentasyon getirdi. Bu Türkiye için ciddi güçlükler anlamına geliyor. Bu durumda Türkiye bu karmaşık duruma neden girmeli? Türkiye evet geçmişte bir rolü vardı. Bugün de aktif bir rolü var. Gelecekte de potansiyel bir rolü olacak. Eğer tarih
is a kind of on and off engagement. They have a on and off relationship with Yemen, at least since the
1630'larda Osmanlı müdahalesi oldu biliyorsunuz. Düzeltiyorum. 1538'de oldu bu. 1630'larda ve 1830'larda da oldu ve 1918'e kadar Türkiye'nin müdahalesi bir şekilde devam etti. Burada Osmanlı İmparatorluğu'nun yaptığı bazı hataların düzeltilmesi de belki gerekiyor. Yani Türkiye'nin şöyle bir durum var. Osmanlı evet çok hata yaptı ama Türkiye'nin kendisinden ders alabileceği bir geçmişi var en azından. Diğerlerinin böyle bir geçmişi de yok. Dolayısıyla bu Türkiye'yi daha avantajlı bir konuma getiriyor. Yemen çatışmasını anlamak için. Osmanlı İmparatorluğu
So it's a great potential to tap into the history like we're going to discuss today. But it's also important to understand that the Yemeni context is very different than the Turkish context. So the historical legacy of Yemen is very different. And we also have basically the actual Turkish situation. What you see today is a Turkey that is more important. I would say that you see now that you have a Turkey that is more important in international politics than over the last 100 years. You have a Turkey that has came out of the Libyan conflict as a kind of military winner. You have a Turkey that came out of the Azerbaijani-Armenian conflict as a military winner as well. You have a Turkey that came out of Syria quite well. So it asserted itself in Syria. But you also have a Turkey that kind of moved step by step from the use of soft power to a kind of more hard power. And there's losses affiliated with that. There's some loss that can start out. So soft power can suit basically the appliance of hard power. Turkey has a lot of innovation. It has a lot of economic clout as well as military clout. And what we see today is a strong Turkish role in Yemen when it comes to humanitarian efforts. We see the Turkish Red Crescent being involved. We see the Humanitarian Aid Foundation being involved. And we see then that the Turkish aid has become important and probably saved a lot of Yemeni lives for the last 5 years. So Turkey today is saving Yemeni lives. And that's actually not only a humanitarian good effort, it's also suiting the use. It's also suiting the use of hard power by Turkey in other areas because it's built up a more complex image of Turkey outside of Turkey. We are going to talk a lot about real politics and more realistic approaches to international politics.
Bugün böyle olacağını umuyorum. Ancak şunu da hesaba katmamız gerekiyor. Yumuşak siyaset de oldukça önemli. Reel politik sert müdahaleleri gerektiriyor. Yemen geçmişte bu açıdan çok problematik bir manzara arz etti. Türkiye, Yemen'in içinde bir savaşı kazanmanın zor olduğunu biliyor. Benim şüphelerim şu yönde: Suudi Arabistan, İran ve Emirlikler bunu zor yoldan öğrenecek.
Sorry, Professor, last 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Not at
So
all.
what Turkey should watch for is actually to have a more geopolitical involvement here. So you see perhaps signs that Saudi Arabia and Turkey is thinking about maybe using Yemen as a way of reapproaching each other. I don't think that would be worth it for Turkey. I think Turkey is still seen as neutral in Yemen. It's seen as being closer to Islam than perhaps the other fractions, but still has a sign of neutrality and an image of neutrality. It's seen as strong, and the same goes for Turkish, I would say Turkish ally Qatar. And those two powers have an untapped potential to actually facilitate solutions inside Yemen.
Professor Hansen, can you please switch off your speaker? It is interfering into the broadcast.
Yes, I can do that. And then you might ask yourself, why should Turkey get involved in this? One of the reasons is basically that Turkey has started to use more hard power. It needs to also show that it could wield soft power and work to maintain the international system, to create a kind of combination of a more multifaceted image. When you increase the work of the use of hard power, it's also good to take responsibility for the maintenance of the international system. And Yemen is a big ulcer on the maintenance of the international system. It has the potential to create more regional conflict. It's also the reason that a solution, a positive solution in the Yemeni case, will actually mean more Turkish influence in the Red Sea. So through facilitating peace approaches, through facilitating peace negotiations, you can actually facilitate more Turkish influence. It's also a simple way to reapproach the United States, basically. We see now that the Biden administration increasingly is taking an interest into the Yemen affairs. We also see that the Biden administration is actually walking from a position where it wasn't neutral. It was very closely affiliated with Saudi Arabia, but it's seemingly tilting towards more of a neutrality. I won't say that they are entirely neutral, because that's wrong, but a larger interest in peace, a larger interest in curtailing efforts to help the Emirates, and a larger interest in curtailing the efforts to help Saudi Arabia. You see, for example, that the special envoy was very active in the Oman just now in May. Team Leathercream. The thing is, when you have a Turkish approach to do it has to be multifaceted. It has to understand that the parties in this conflict, they are not homogeneous. They're very much heterogeneous. In some cases, maybe a Turkish effort could be creating peace at a more local level in specific regions than perhaps a total approach to the whole situation. But then you have to grasp that we have heterogeneous parties. A Turkish approach could be track 2 and track 1 as well. It could simply be simple things as training civil servants of the various fractions to try to bring them together. And Turkey still enjoys a lot of goodwill in the country. And then you might ask, why should Turkey succeed if others fail? It's because now Turkey is talking from a position of strength and neutrality. And you had processes in Stockholm, you have processes in Oman, but Turkish has this position of strength and neutrality and its historical lessons learned And this combination makes Turkey more better, basically situated to take this responsibility. So what I'm trying to sell here is maybe I'm speaking to a crowd of sympathizers, but I really hope for the world and for Turkey that we will see a stronger engagement of the Turkish voice in facilitating peace and local peace as well as global, not global, but national peace. And I think Turkey is better situated to do that in other countries. And I think Turkey has to try to avoid to make Yemen a kind of geopolitical key in some kind of power rivalry with, for example, Saudi Arabia or with Iran or with United States or Russia. Because maybe it's time for Turkey to show its strengths when it comes to soft power, and Turkey has a lot of soft power. So I really wish, this is my prayer to today's seminar, I really wish to see a stronger Turkish engagement in relations to handling the Yemeni conflict. And I think this seminar shows really already that there is a lot of competence in Turkey that maybe is unique globally. So that's basically my prayer to the seminar. And thank you for listening to my somewhat more activistic lecture today.
I would like to thank to Professor Hansen for this effective speech. In this speech, he talked about the role of Turkey in Yemen. In fact, Professor Hansen reflected to us the image of Turkish from Norway about Yemen. In this respect, his opinions is very important for us. In fact, he said on Ottoman Empire acted false. We give to historians this knowledge. They deal with this subject. We hope. Thanks a lot. 6 times, Professor Hansen from Norway. I'm from Norway University of Norwich. Şimdi de Yemen Sana Üniversitesi.
Now we are going to have Professor Mohammed Abduh Al-Sururi from Sana'a University of Yemen. He's going to present his speech via internet, and he's going to talk about the political position of Yemen's effect on political history.
تاريخه السياسي فليتبطل.
Now, I would like to leave the floor to Professor Mohammed Abduh Al-Sururi. He will be talking about the impact of geographical location and political history. Professor Al-Sururi, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Professor Al-Sururi? Can you hear us well? The floor is yours. We cannot hear you right now. Yes, now we can hear you. Please go ahead. I guess there's a problem with the connection.
Okay.
We will try to connect again, and we know that there are problems with the internet connection in Yemen, but if we cannot reconnect, he previously sent us his presentation. Yes, we have his presentation. Maybe we can share that. We can share his speech. He has been so kind to attempt to connect, and he shared his presentation beforehand, just in case. We would like to thank him for his thoughtfulness. Distinguished Professor. Yeah, I guess you cannot hear me, so we will be playing your video. Okay, we will be playing your pre-recorded video. Today's topic is the impact of geographical location and the political history of Yemen. First of all, if we talk about the strategic importance of Yemen using this map, as you can see, Yemen has an important location that is close to many important regions, such as the Gulf. And actually, because of its historical importance, many countries, many governments have tried to set influence on Yemen. And throughout history, Yemen has played a very important role in the region. So, if we go back to our research subject, the impact of geographical location on the political history of Yemen. Let's go back to Yemen. Yemen map. Please observe the coastal regions on the west and in the south. So, the strategic importance of Yemen, we know that from the Red Sea to the south and the west, covering the Arab Sea and the Gulf of Aden. So, Yemen has an important location neighboring both seas, and it has had a significant importance both geographically and militarily throughout history. Until 1870s, there were many rivalries between different dynasties in this coastal region. After that time, Emir Asil and Abil Arish family seized power in this region, and afterwards the Mecca started to become more important in the region, and Yemen therefore gained an international importance in that area. And afterwards, Yemen was came under the control of Portugal. Portugal started controlling the land routes and the seaways in this region. And what did the Portuguese do? This region between the Red Sea and the Arab Peninsula, they controlled this area. They deployed 5 warships in this region, and after that, the Arab Islamic warships attacked this region and completely blocked the entry to this region. And the ships from this region, warships from this region, went to Indian coasts and completely covered the trade routes going to India. And the Arab dynasties took control over the seaways from India to the Red Sea. And these efforts of the Portuguese and their control over these regions, particularly in the Red Sea, and it led to a Portuguese domination over all seaways from Yemen to Jeddah. And after that, Ottoman Empire put an end to the Portuguese domination on the region, and the whole Arab Peninsula came under the control of the Ottoman state. And the Ottoman government reopened the trade routes to Islamic countries, and the Muslim businessmen, tradesmen started doing business on these routes freely again. There's a problem with the video. The video is replaying, obviously. Afterwards, the video is replaying, so we are translating this part again. The Portuguese invaded this region, and they took control over all trade routes and prevented the Muslim states from using these routes. And from Egypt, and they prevented the the Islamic countries from accessing the sea routes from India to the Red Sea. And then the Ottoman Empire came, and after the creation of the Ottoman Empire, since they represented the Caliphate, they supported all Muslims, and they united all Muslim countries, they supported Muslim countries, and they also supported the sacred lands. And it's really important that they permitted commercial activity in this region, and they helped proliferate the trade routes in this area. There was a huge trade network built in this region during the Ottoman era, and the region was seized from the Portugals, and the Mamluki also started to gain control over this region. And we see that the Ottoman state reopened all coasts of Yemen to Islamic states, Islamic governments, and reopened the Mandik Strait and the Gulf of Aden. And the Gulf of Aden became an important trade port in the region. The Portuguese wanted to invade these regions, but after that, the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent won the war in the region and reopened this region to Muslim countries. And our second subject, the tribes, the dynasties, were competing against each other, and particularly in the port region, there were many wars and conflicts around the port areas. And this port has military and political significance, and for many years it has been the scene of similar conflicts. After that, international powers started fighting over the coasts of Yemen. They tried to occupy these regions. And when we look at the political and historical importance of this region, the non-Turkish speaking groups took control of the coasts of Yemen, and there were conflicts between Egypt and these actors. And Ahmet Pasha later recognized the political and historical importance of this region, and he assigned a governor to rule over this land and to finalize the activities, to eliminate the activities of these groups in this region. And then the Ottoman troops came again and took control of the ports. The emir appointed by Ottomans came to power, and the emir took control over the ports. But since he deviated from the control of the Ottomans, he was defeated. And Muhammad Emin and Sharif kept all this region under control, as well as the trade routes. And Muhammad Ali Pasha, the Ottoman governor in Yemen, sent his brother to this region. He was appointed as the governor, and another conflict started. Afterwards, there was a crisis between Mehmet Ali Pasha and the Ottoman state, and Mustafa Pasha left the government and he went to Egypt, and in 1838 the Pasha passed away. Afterwards, the new Pasha went to Hudaydah. That area was controlled by him at that time, and Hussein Sharif, because of fitna, could not seize control of many areas in this region, and the coastal regions and the ports were abandoned by Sharif, and thus he had to withdraw his troops from these regions. So he could not get a military victory in this region. And Sharif Ali Pasha also tried to control these coastal regions of Yemen, but he failed. Many documents are evidence of this. Sharif Hussein left these regions to the Ottoman army, and he decided that an Ottoman rule would be more productive for the country. And the Ottoman Pasha took over the lands from the previous governor, and Ahmet Muhtar Pasha went to Yemen and arrived in the Hudaydah region, and this region came under this Hudaydah region became the military base of the Ottoman army. And afterwards he went to Sana'a, and as a result of the conflict between different dynasties in that region, the Pasha decided to give Sana'a to Ottoman control. And in 1872, this region was transferred to the Ottoman state, and Yemen once again became an Ottoman province, and Ahmet Muhtar Pasha became the governor of the province. So we can conclude that the dynasties in Yemen are often associated with the other dynasties, and they were often in conflict with each other over the rule of Yemen, and sometimes they fought together to ensure an Islamic rule in these lands. And as a result of these conflicts, there were these conflicts were also a barrier to the unity of all dynasties in Yemen. But the Ottoman state believed in the unity of Yemen, and to push non-Muslim forces from the lands of Yemen, the Ottoman state started some cooperations with different actors, and due to its geographical location, Yemen became a highlight in the international arena during specific times. And the ports on the coastal regions of Yemen were invaded by various powers, and they were the scene of various military conflicts. And when we look at this map, you can see the territories seized by the Ottoman Empire from Algeria, in the Middle East, and in Europe, and in Yemen. So the Ottoman state also tried to protect the Arab lands to prevent it from falling into the hands of foreign powers. So we should underline that the main objective of the Ottoman state was to protect the sacred lands and to protect this region from potential attacks. This was the main and ultimate objective. The Ottoman Empire tried to protect the Bilad al-Haramain, the sacred cities, and I would like to thank the organizers for this conference. We would like to thank the professor for his presentation, and I would like to thank him for finishing his presentation in time. He addressed the issue under two main topics. The first perspective was the importance of the geographical location of Yemen, and secondly, his second perspective was the conflict between different dynasties over the control of various ports in coastal regions of Yemen. And he also emphasized that the attacks in Yemen and how the Ottoman state mitigated those attacks and protected the region. And finally, I would like to thank all panelists for their presentations. Since we don't have any time, we won't have a Q&A session. And in the afternoon session, we will have an online panel. We will have online panelists. We would like to thank Hüseyin Al-Amri for sending his presentation to us. Professor Al-Sururi, he addressed the problem of Yemen from two perspectives: the importance of geographical location of Yemen and the competition between national and international powers over the ports of Yemen. And the Ottoman state played an important role to protect Yemen, and he talked about how the Ottoman state turned the Red Sea into an Islamic lake. Before closing the session, I would like to thank all panelists for their contributions. We addressed the issue of Yemen and we brought it to the global agenda. And because of the time limit, we won't have a Q&A session. And our first session will be held online in the afternoon. Hope to see you. I hope you stay safe.
Oturum başkanımız ve konuşmacılarımıza
I would like to thank the chair and the panelists for their contributions. Distinguished guests, our online sessions will continue at 2 p.m. today and tomorrow at 10 p.m. You can follow the sessions online via www.tbmm.gov.tr. I hope you enjoy the sessions.